Gentlemen, welcome to another edition of Barbershop Convo Series. Today, we will be honoring the families who have experienced loss and raising awareness about pregnancy and infant loss. Welcome. My name is Daddy Ford. I will be your moderator. Good afternoon, everyone. And it is that important that thank you for joining us today as we come together to honor Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month. This month is about raising awareness, but it is also about creating a space for support, healing, and reflection. Today we gather not only to remember the lives lost far too soon, but also to engage in meaningful dialogue about the experiences and challenges surrounding pregnancy and infant loss. Together, we can foster greater understanding, address disparities, and provide much needed resources to those affected by these heartbreaking experiences. I want to remind you that today is a safe space for sharing, learning, and supporting one another. Today, we have two guest speakers, and they will be introducing themselves and their credentials and how they will be implementing this content.
So, hi everybody, my name is Sharon Turnage, and before I just give you just a little background about myself, I just want to reiterate and acknowledge that October is Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month. We want to just acknowledge all the mothers, fathers, families out there that have experienced this loss. We want you to know that we understand, we honor, we're just here. We're representing our babies, right? And all this month, even outside of this event, let's acknowledge all the families that have survived, right? And that are dealing with this on a day-to-day basis, even if you don't see that they are. But just know that we're going to teach you and tell you what to do and how to do, but we're going to use this as a call to action today to just do what we can and do our part to help families everywhere. So once again, I'm Sharon Turnage. I'm a licensed social worker, addiction counselor. As a psychotherapist, my areas of expertise are grief, crisis, trauma. I am a PhD candidate at Yeshiva University. My research area is perinatal loss and grief, and looking at how social determinants of health impact our grieving, and if we are grieving, and if we are, is it of value? If we aren't, is it a necessity? I'm also a graduate of Florida University's LMSW program, as well as a proud graduate of CUNY York College, where I received a degree in psychology with a minor in biology pre-med. I am the founder of the Danvers Leukemia Fund, dedicated to blood cancer awareness, and I'm the proud founder of the Tyler Nicole Foundation, where we work with families that have reproductive health, whether it's reproductive health challenges, IVF, perinatal maternal loss. But also, Tyler Nicole Foundation is a big proponent of reproductive justice, right? Ensuring that as women, we are able to go through that perinatal journey, right? With support, receiving equitable care, and ensuring that we don't leave anybody behind, right? So when it comes to pregnancy, that we honor and ensure that every family has just an amazing journey and process in that. So,
Thank you, Sharon. All right, good afternoon, community. My name is Amina Woods, and I am also a licensed social worker based here in Queens, New York City. Born and raised in New York City. I earned my master's degree from Silverman School of Social Work. And I studied at the Institute of Contemporary Psychotherapy, where I learned how to provide psychodynamic psychotherapy treatment for individuals who are dealing with life stressors, trauma, anxiety, depression, mood disorders, all those things. But my specialty is in mental health, with a specialty in maternal mental health. I practice as a birth doula. And in my work as a birth doula, I get to combine the skills as a social worker, as a psychotherapist, to support the needs of expecting mama and their families, to help families have a safe, trauma-free birth. And I like what you said, Sharon, about being in honor and paying homage to the survivors of pregnancy and infant loss, because it's a traumatic loss, right? Pregnancy, an unexpected pregnancy loss, um, an unexpected infant loss is a trauma that is a lot more common than I think our community recognizes it. And as much as the statistics show the commonness of this issue, um, the isolating the feeling of isolation around this particular topic is definitely speaks so much louder than the numbers can show, for sure. So I'm happy to be here to have this conversation within the month of pregnancy and infant loss awareness, to uplift the experiences of the families in our community that's had these traumatic losses, and to raise awareness and hopefully to inspire continued conversation around this topic, so that as a community we can come up with ideas on how to heal, how to move on, because definitely there's healing in community, for sure.
Okay, excellent. Great, ladies. We're going to start with these questions, and I'm going to start with you, Sister Amina. And the question states, understanding pregnancy and infant loss. How common is pregnancy loss?
It's so common, right? So common, but it's such an isolating experience. But in fact, Black women in particular are 2 to 3 times more likely than white women to experience pregnancy loss. And the actual number might be just a little bit higher, right? Some sorry, some women lose pregnancy before they may even realize that they're pregnant. So those numbers don't always go accounted for, but those numbers might be a lot higher than we realize. Stillbirth, so there are women who experience miscarriages. Miscarriages are losses of pregnancy before 20 weeks and under, and there are the number of stillbirths that occur in our community, and there are
25,000 a year we experience the stillbirth.
right.
25,000 stillbirths,
I believe.
approximately.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Yeah, so the numbers that I got was that every one in 160 pregnancies,
yeah.
right? The outcome is stillbirth.
Yeah, and just to add to it, 1 in 4 mothers experiences a loss. 1 in 4. 1 million babies die every year across this country. So I just want to reiterate that again. 1 million babies die every year across this country. 1 in 4 families. And Black women, 3 to 4 times more likely, but in some areas, like for instance, certain parts of New York City, the number is 9 times. And when we look at some of the contributing factors, right, we have to look at the social determinants of health. And I know we don't have all day, but I'll just basically what the social determinants of health are. If you don't have food, you don't have transportation, and you maybe don't have housing. Now that's going to increase your chances of experiencing a loss. So, and health disparities is real. We'll go into that a little bit, but understanding that the highest death rate of any of the disorders, even higher than cancer, higher than car accidents, 1 million babies. And we don't speak enough, if at all, about this.
I was just about to ask you, what are some of the contributing factors to these numbers?
Well, just like maternal loss, right, which also is 3-4 times more likely for Black women. And when we say Black women, we want to say 3 to 4 times more likely for Black women than white women, Hispanic women, and Asian women. The only other Black women is Indigenous women that experience the loss that high. And contributing factors, well, I don't have the exact number. I believe it's around 80% of deaths are preventable. Then we have to look at contributing factors of Black women's not being listened to, their concerns not being taken seriously. And then also just, a lot of times we put a lot of faith in our providers. And then if the providers tell us, oh, this, oh, that, oh, the other, just follow this, follow that, you'll be fine. But what really happens is that a lot of things the providers are missing. And because we put our faith in our providers, then when things occur, like for instance, in my case, and just to tell you guys a little bit about my story, I experienced 2 pregnancy losses, both at around 26 weeks, 28 weeks. Both, definitely one could have been preventable. My trust in my provider was what allowed me to take the care, the word of the provider, that the care I was receiving was adequate. And what wound up happening was I lost my baby. I almost lost my life as well. And so that's one pregnancy. And then another, medical treatment being what it is. When I experienced that loss in 93, I don't think we were as advanced. And so I think in this day and age, that pregnancy could have been more survivable. But the bottom line is, as patients, right? Because that's what we are, patients. That's what we should be able to be, is patients in situations like this. But what tends to happen is the provider gives the care. And I don't think the care is always adequate enough. And not to blame the providers, because I think a lot of it has to do with education, the education they're receiving. Are they even receiving the type of education to understand that not all pregnancies are problem-free? There's a lot of high-risk pregnancies, and a lot of times as women, we don't seek high-risk doctors. Not that we don't want to, but we don't know to. And so if we're not, and then the use of having midwives, doulas, nurses, even social workers being a part of a team that's treating you, all of that causes a lot of what is happening, right?
Well, Sharon, that makes me wonder, right? Like, maybe we should be putting an onus onto the providers, right? Because in your role as a provider, your role is to provide not just the treatment and the care, but also to provide information and resources, right? And so as a provider, if we're not listening to the patient, if we're not taking the information from the patient seriously and using our knowledge, right, our wisdom to redirect this patient so that they can get the quality care that they deserve, then I do think that there is some blame that is owed to the provider for not following through, right, and seeing their work through in a way that offers the quality care so that these deaths, right, these losses that are preventable in order to, so that we can avoid those losses.
Excellent. One just quick follow-up. Is core food, core healthy choices of good food? Because sometimes when you go in one area, food is excellent, you can visually see good quality food, and you go into another area and you look at the food, you're like, it's nowhere in the world, it's the same label from here to there. Are those contributing factors?
Well, absolutely, because once again, to determine itself, if I'm not eating an adequate diet, that is not gonna help facilitate a pregnancy where the baby is getting the nutrients the baby needs, and as we know, the baby is going to eat.
Oh, absolutely.
The mother is going to, miss out on those nutrients, and all of that can contribute to high-risk issues, right? Which is why it's important for us to use programs like WIC, make sure we're getting enough milk and enough food and cheese, just that whole dietary, right, thing. But the bottom line is, many of us can't afford the food. Many of us aren't being instructed on what food is adequate, right? We don't all have nutritionists. We don't all speak nutrition
Right.
in the communities.
Right.
So once again, here's a social determinant of health that because we haven't made food a priority, and I'm not saying we haven't tried, but I'm just saying we don't have, in communities that I've been in, we don't have an enormous amount of talk on food security, what is healthy eating. And so then once again, that impacts our health. And not just pregnancy-wise, just our health overall.
Thank you.
And I also want us to be mindful of, because I'm always thinking about like ownership, like whose fault really is it? Because like the way the question is posed, it almost makes me like reflexively start to think about our community blaming our circumstances on ourselves, right? We're not eating properly. We're not eating better. Our grocery store conditions are different from other neighborhoods, right? But oftentimes that's done with the most intention, right? With the most intention of leaving out quality goods and services to certain types of people. Right. And so I'm thinking about like just the way that systemic racism shows up and shows out just as a matter of our access to getting quality fresh produce. We think about like the way New York City has been changing over the past decade with gentrification and how the redevelopment of our communities have been taking out certain essential resources, right? For those who need it, like right down the block, right? We have our aunties, our grandmas, our disabled community members who can't get all the way to, I don't know, some part on Long Island to a Whole Foods to get fresh food, or who can't get all the way to Jamaica Avenue to get to a fresh produce stand. I don't know about anybody else, but what I've been seeing, and maybe there's been a crackdown in the city, but we've been having a lot more smoke shops pop up as opposed to, right, as opposed to the produce. I saw that in a neighborhood in Brooklyn where there was a produce stand right at the corner of, where's that? Fulton Street and Kingston. It was a produce stand. That produce stand is not there anymore, but it's definitely opened up as a smoke shop, right? And so when we think about the systemic barriers to us being able to maintain our health so that our pregnancies can be sustained and our pregnant mamas can live through pregnancy, it just seems like the writing is on the wall to me. And I just dream of a day where our community can sort of like relieve ourselves of that accountability, because we're doing the best that we can, but there are so many structural forces that are impeding our abilities to take care of ourselves in the way that we definitely know how to, but the access is missing.
And one last thing, the reason why I'm always trying to be so inclusive of the providers, and I don't want to throw so much blame on them, is because we want that allyship. I feel the biggest thing with what's going on is the education and the empowerment, right? We know the providers aren't totally being educated in school. They're being that generalist foundational education is being given, but as far as how many hours are they getting as far as perinatal health, perinatal loss, how many hours are they getting as far as all these other different things? I don't think it's there. And I think a lot of what's happening is just on-the-job training. So they're learning, which we don't need. We don't need you to learn on us. We need you to kind of know going in. So I want to hold all the schools to task, right? Because we both went to schools. They didn't cover reproductive health in my master's, right? I'm doing my doctorate, that's my area. But if I wasn't doing that area, I wasn't necessarily learning that in school. So I think we need to hold the educational systems to task to understand that we don't just need a foundational understanding, right, of what we do as social workers, or as doctors, or as lawyers, or whatever. But we need more focused education and training in areas that are impacting us, like perinatal loss, maternal loss. We shouldn't have the numbers blow up as they are. And then now all of a sudden we see it as a crisis. Right? And we're still not necessarily changing the curriculum in the schools to like include it or whatever. So I just think maybe it doesn't have to be the curriculum. Maybe it can be continuing education, right? I came up with my own provider training that I do free of charge and any and everywhere. And I've educated over 1,000 providers already, right, with my own framework. And somebody like me, I could record that, right? And I can send that all around, right? Are you gonna put that in front of the students, right? I think when you have a lot of people that are trying to put the information out there, we're trying to educate, then it falls on the schools that are educating the providers to make sure that information gets in front of students, just like we're doing here. This isn't a mistake that this barbershop has been open and had nothing but conversations that are just on so many different topics that are from voting to bullying to right? And because this is community capacity building, right? What we want to do is understand that we can grow on a micro individual level, meso or community level, and macro on an institutional and policy level. But the intent, right? We have to be intentional, and this is issues and problems that we want to solve. Now, the bigger question is, do we want to solve it, right? And so then that's a whole nother, we're not trying to call anybody to task, but when we don't try to do better. So like if our hospital system doesn't try to do better, system has to look within them. So
You're not gonna get that. Thank you, ladies. Next question. What are the different types of pregnancy losses?
perfect. Just like we mentioned earlier, we have miscarriages, which are losses from conception to 20 weeks, right? Then we have stillbirth, and which is 20 weeks to birth. Then and I think you could say maybe up to 28, no, we'll say to birth. Then from birth to 28 days, we consider that postnatal deaths. But then from like 28 days up to 1 year is infant death. Right? My baby lived 26 hours. And then she got killed. So I don't know if people realize my baby was considered born alive. I have a birth certificate. I had to get a death certificate. I also had to do a funeral, right? Because she was considered alive, right? She was born, and there's no insurance for that. There was nobody there to hold my hand and be like, we're gonna get you through. Fortunate for me, I had my baby at North Sherman Hospital, and that hospital had a bereavement program, but you had to have a baby at that hospital. Fortunate for me, I mean, a miracle because they set me up with a funeral home. The funeral home, Stutzman and Queens Village want to just give them an amazing shout out. They picked up the baby for free. They did my funeral for free, cemetery and everything. And he told me at that time he did that because he experienced a loss. And so he wanted to do it for other families, right? That allyship.
Mhm.
I don't know. My first loss was a set of quadruplets, 4 boys. I didn't know what to do. I signed them over to the hospital for research because I couldn't even think at 23 years old of doing a funeral for 4 babies, right? Let alone processing that, let alone did a social worker come and like hold my hand, let alone I lost them and just had to leave the hospital. Even with Tyler, they brought me back to the floor, the same floor where I went into labor and had to hear babies crying and parents giving birth. And I'm looking in a room knowing I'm leaving a hospital, which I didn't want to leave, that they wanted me to leave the hospital without my baby. And just the fact that I didn't have a social worker come to me, I didn't have somebody holding my hand at that moment. I was connected with the social worker after the fact. But laying in that bed thinking about how can I move forward in life and without my baby was I've just never experienced nothing like that again. So for me to have lost 5 babies and still be mentally here today happy, right? Because I healed, people helped me heal and gave me the support. And unfortunately for so many other families, that is not available, right? There's so many families that have lost babies, pregnancies, and have had to leave in that situation. And nobody's ever really talked about it. And they've had more than one loss. I know somebody, when we did an event, the guy experienced 8 miscarriages. How do you even, because every loss, that's your baby, that's your doctor, that's your football player, that's your everything. You've already had dreams and hopes with that child, you know?
Yeah.
So the goal of this is that, a lot of families grieve in silence, and there's not a lot of clinicians like us that can provide that care that that person needs. Like, my expertise is in grief. You're a doula, and you don't just work with people, you can work with them even if they've experienced a loss, right?
And I just also want to highlight some of the other types of losses as well, right? Because there's miscarriage, egg, implants outside of the uterus.
Yeah.
Usually
what's that called?
ectopic.
At the top.
Yep.
Okay.
There are also molar pregnancies, when there's an abnormal tissue growing in the uterus, instead of a viable pregnancy. Then there's blighted ovum. I did some research on the different types. There's blighted ovum known as an embryonic pregnancy that occurs when a fertilized egg implants in the uterus, but the embryo doesn't develop. Then there's recurrent pregnancy losses, right, where you're defined as having 2 or more consecutive miscarriages. I do think, though, what goes often overlooked in the conversation around pregnancy and infant loss awareness or abortion, right? Or abortion, right? Losses should also be recognized as well, because every woman's decision to release her pregnancy is different, right?
Okay.
And and those experiences of terminating pregnancies can bring on the same feelings and the same types of emotion and the same trauma. It can be rooted in similar type of trauma as experiencing a miscarriage or stillborn.
And to add to that, if we include the number of abortions that happen in this country, that brings the number of losses to 2 million
Per year.
per year. And we want to also hold our families that experience IVF losses as well, right? Every time you're trying to conceive and you get back not pregnant, right? That's a loss. And if you try for a year, every month, or every cycle, right? And you do not conceive, right? That is a loss. And so these are the losses. And once again, how many times do we talk to somebody that's going through IVF and they're like not pregnant again, but we don't see that person, that anguish that comes with, you know.
I understand.
Yeah. Yeah. What about families that are trying to conceive and every month there's pregnancy, right? Just that anguish in that as well.
Great information. Okay, this next question. When it comes to BIPOC, BIPOC, individuals, prevalent is pregnancy loss amongst this patient population.
So once again, and we can speak to that, for BIPOC individual, 4 times more likely to experience a loss. And I'm gonna say it again, the white, Hispanic, and Black, and indigenous people of color. 4 times more city. 9 times less of loss. If it was people of this is definitely Blacks at an alarmingly crisis rate. I mean, losing babies, and not only losing babies, 4 times more likely to lose your own life at Black women. So the elephant, systemic racism, institutional racism, and these different things, of course, are contributing factors. And once again, not, you know, if I come in and people don't, if I come in and people say, and I say I'm experiencing this and I'm being ignored, people are not listening to me, listening to my concerns, then that is a problem. And a lot of times I do research in this area. Black women complain that they're not listened to, that their concerns are not taken seriously. But one other thing that I want to point out, outright abuse. So I do agree. This abuse, threatening to do procedure. People don't like it, tells them to do, right? An increase in C-section, right? And many of them unnecessary, right? But I heard of a story, if you don't do the epidural or whatever, oh no, if you don't do a B.A.C.E, we won't give you an epidural. We'll just leave you on pain, right? And for instance, doing procedures that not even getting informed consent from the patient, doing procedures I don't even know about in my case. And I was never told to this day what was done during my birthing, during the birth of my quadruplets, and during the birth of my daughter. which is part of the reason why I have high-risk issues in the first place. All these things happen to Black women that are happening. And so how do we address that, right? I don't know if people know, but there's only 5% of doctors are Black.
Countrywide
In the
or
US.
worldwide?
In the US.
Okay.
4% of PhDs, like myself, are Black. Right? So when we're receiving care from individuals that don't understand us, there's been instances, for instance, where people have asked for pain medication, and sometimes that's looked at as us maybe having a problem and wanting the pain medication for addictive reasons, instead of I'm in pain and I need medication, right? I've heard horror stories of the experiences, and I myself experienced.
I think it's really important to bring up what you're bringing up, right? To identify the nuances that cause the climates surrounding maternal mortality, pregnancy, and infant loss, right? Because it really, when you pull back all of the layers, it really does boil down to systemic racism. I was at a conference a couple months ago where they were talking about the rise of, say, rectal cancer, right? And so when we get into the statistics and down to the nitty gritty, what I was hearing from the medical providers, they did recognize that Black women are at a higher rate of, right, at that conference for that presentation, rectal cancer. But then they often just stop there, right? Mm-hmm. And then I'm always left, I know the answer to the question, but I'm always finding myself asking, but why is that, right? Because the way they present this information as if Black women or Black people, right, it's just inherent in us, right? It's just not something biologically inherent within Black people, Black women that causes us to have these issues. But no, the real issue is what we talked about a little earlier, the systemic racism, systemic discrimination and bias within our healthcare system. And when you look at all of the nuances, that this is how it presents itself, right? I had a birth over the summer where my client didn't want, I'm a birth doula, by the way, if I didn't share, where this client, she felt uncomfortable taking off her bra, right? She didn't want to take off her bra. She's a young woman. She didn't want to take off her bra. But this pestery nurse, and this birth sat with me for a very long time, this pestery nurse started threatening her. Well, if you don't take off your bra, I'm going to cut you out of it. Right? But why did it even really matter? This woman wanted to keep her bra on. She said she felt uncomfortable without it on. So, Ms. Nurse, why does it make you any difference as to whether or not she takes her bra off or on? Whatever the reasons are, obviously why the nurse wanted her to take her bra off, we could work around that. Everything is a workaround, right? There was actually just recently the first qualitative study about the experience of Black birthing women, right? And in the study, you can read the women's testimonials about how they felt dismissed, right? The same nurse, every time my client would bring up something, she was just feeling just really uncomfortable because birth is an uncomfortable feeling. But she was always made to feel that she was asking for too much. And my client left that birth and she said, I was made to feel delusional. Mm-hmm. Every time she brought up a concern or every time she made others aware of what she was feeling and what is it that she needed, mm-hmm. people they weren't taking her serious. They were dismissing her, threatening her, right? Making it seem like what she was asking for was just too much, right? It was just too much. You're just asking for too much. Another blanket? Why? You're cold. Why are you cold? She's in labor. Of course she's gonna be hot. She's gonna be cold. She's gonna be nauseous. All those things. And so I'm really happy that qualitative research is out there because now it just doesn't sound like I don't know, the theory for us, right? This is our lived experiences as a community, and now we have evidence-based proof that this is the experience that Black women are experiencing, and this ties into our maternal mortality rates that are high, our pregnancy and infant loss rates are high because of all of these
Even our
nuances.
C-section rates,
All of that. There's a report, there's the research study too that got floated around social media around the disparities within certain types of interventions, right? And the numbers show that women who needed the C-sections were more likely to not have gotten the C-section, and women who did not need the C-section were more likely to have been recommended and received the C-section.
and also certain hospitals, to increase their revenues, were giving some Black women unnecessary C-section.
Absolutely.
That was, and as a matter of fact, I have that article on my computer. I will definitely share it.
And real briefly to the audience, I just want to just ask anybody from the audience real quick, move along to the program. So what you've just heard so far, is there anybody that'd like to ask a question or make any comments of something that was related to any family members or friends, just to keep you consistently engaged with this conversation? Please do so now before we move on with the program. Anyone has anything to say? But love, how you doing, sis? Any relative questions? No?
And while you're looking at that, I wanted to add is for us providers, it's really something, because we're not just Black providers, right? BIPOC providers providing care. We're also the ones that's receiving this care. We're receiving the same care that we know our client populations are receiving.
Absolutely,
You know?
right? Because the disparities aren't limited to socioeconomic status. It's not limited to your level of education.
Oh, and
Right.
when it comes to pregnancy loss, it doesn't matter how much money you make. People, I have a slide from Beyonce, John Legend, and his wife, Prince, Meghan Markle. Yeah, I have a slide with all of these people.
Yeah.
Oh, Michelle Obama, Pink, just all of these individuals, all the money they had, and they still experience pregnancy loss. So it doesn't matter who you are, where you are, what you are. Once again, 1 million babies die, but we also it's no way we cannot recognize as BIPOC women what our Black and Indigenous people of color are experiencing, right? That is our commitment to our community, to be loud and proud in making sure we let it be known what BIPOC individuals are dealing with. And in these numbers, not being fair, right? It's not fair that we're experiencing the losses the way we are.
Excellent. Next question. What are some of the myths and misconceptions surrounding these types of losses?
It's the mother's
That,
fault.
oh, well, okay. So now I get to talk my research.
That is the mother's fault.
One is the mother's fault. So I, once again, do reproductive justice. Criminalization of miscarriage is real. Wanted to take a couple minutes just to talk about that. So we already know Roe v. Wade has been overturned, and now, depending on what state you live in, is whether or not you have access to abortion, contraceptives, pregnancy planning. So there is a term called the criminalization of miscarriage, which means that if it is determined that you, maybe through your actions, not getting enough sleep, not eating, using drugs, there was a situation down south where the girl was pregnant and had a fight, instigated a fight with another person, and that person shot her. The person who shot her was not charged, but the mom was charged because the baby passed away. So the mom was charged for the baby's death. So if they deem you, through your actions, caused the baby to not survive, right? You had a miscarriage, and if a prosecutor out there wants to look at it as it's your fault, you can actually be charged for that baby. Yeah, that. And I want to also point out, because we don't talk about this really at all, but there's this thing going across this country where there are some people that want to give rights to the unborn, and those rights to supersede the rights of the mother. We call that fetal personhood rights. I've been studying this for the past 3 years. There is a concerted effort, and has been since Roe v. Wade was put in place, right, for fetal personhood rights, which is part of the pro-life movement. And so the goal is to give the baby rights, right? And so those rights supersede the mom. So like if the mom is at a certain point, we can leave that mother, and we're seeing it all across the country. She will stay pregnant with that fetus, even if we know eventually it's gonna be of harm to the mother. But the concept is the baby's life has rights. Even to the point that even your fertilized eggs, right, your zygotes, right? If you're doing IVF and you have, your own set of eggs that you're holding on to, there's a concerted effort that every single one of those eggs has to produce a baby, and maybe you can't even donate those eggs to somebody else. You can't just get rid of them on your own, right? This fetal personhood rights. So I just wanted to point that out because it's an election year. We had an election earlier today. There was voting and everything to do with voting. And I know people tend to say, oh, I'm voting for this reason, that reason, or the other reason. Know that what's on the line with this election is the fact that you as a woman, the minute you get pregnant, your body may no longer be yours. And that there can be laws and things put in place that will ensure the birth of that baby to the detriment or the loss of you. So I just want to put that out there, because I don't want to tell people how to vote, but I want to ensure that everybody knows what's on the line. Because at least when I was having my 4 boys, and even Tyler, my daughter, I was really sick. I could have died. In some of these states right now, that wasn't enough for me to then go into labor, for them to induce me to have the baby. I may have still had to hold on to that pregnancy until the point of me almost near death. And we already, I don't remember the young lady's name, but there was already a case in this country where the young lady died because they would not give her a D&C. In Georgia. All right. So we need to understand that babies come from moms, and you don't separate one from the other, right? And many of us moms, as much as we want to be mothers, right? If I have to decide between my life, especially if I already have other children, I may have to make a choice for my health and well-being that maybe I can't proceed with this pregnancy. But depending on where you live, you may not have that choice.
And also there are 13 or 14 states that if a woman is raped, the person who raped the woman has rights.
Oh, absolutely. I didn't even get yeah, no, absolutely. And so you would have to proceed with that pregnancy regardless. You understand? Regardless. And we tend to say that we're pro-life, right? And I understand that, but in social work, because I'm a social worker, right? We have what's called autonomy, right? And we also look at the individual We have to look at each individual and understand each individual's circumstance. Is it fair to say that you were raped and must raise this child, right? Maybe somebody like me would make that choice to do it, right? Maybe for somebody else, that might be too hard of a choice. And then that could come with thoughts of wanting to hurt yourself or whatever, right? Because mental health is real. So I just want us, if I could just add, and we can get back to what we're doing and let you add on, but I want us to stop thinking for what I feel, right? Because every person has to walk their walk, they have to walk their path, and they have to live in their life. And when we're trying to think of making decisions for somebody else, we don't know what that person is dealing with, what that person is going through. And so it's very crucial that when we're just thinking of what's best, that we are mindful of that.
And I just also wanted just to bring back attention briefly just to the pregnancy conditions that are beyond anyone's control, right? Thinking about the myth that it's the mother's fault, because there are genetic conditions, right? Medical conditions that won't be able to sustain a pregnancy. And so if you lose a pregnancy because of a genetic abnormality, because of a medical condition that you're experiencing, it's still not the mother's fault, definitely. Another myth I would say is that the fathers don't grieve pregnancy loss, right? That I think there's a lot of attention focused on the mothers and their experiences around pregnancy and infant loss, and we tend to overshadow what the experience is like for fathers, because that
Thing, it's all whole man thing.
Oh, wait, fathers, we are holding space for you. And I do the work and I'm always inclusive of the dads. It's always been a big thing to me. But we, as a society, have to hold space for you. We don't do it enough because fathers grieve. In my own loss, I grieve separate from her dad because at the time we had broke up for reasons that I felt was his cause. And I went 20 plus years. This is my baby and my loss, and I'm gonna grieve my baby. And I had to really take a step back and realize that we lost 20 years where we could have grieved and processed this together. Been a support together. So I'm learning through the process too, y'all.
Yeah, that reminds me of another thing, right, that we shouldn't be talking about this. We shouldn't talk about pregnancy loss, right? I think depending on your culture, it becomes like a hush-hush situation. But that only increases and fosters that feeling of isolation. Like we mentioned earlier, pregnancy and infant loss is so much more common than we recognize. Two out of three, or 2 to 3 Black women, right, are more likely to experience, right, 2 to 3 times more likely for Black women, right? So when we think about our community, I know probably almost every person that I've spoken to has experienced some type of pregnancy or infant loss.
And if they didn't or know somebody, my mother had 4 losses.
Mhm.
Yeah, my mother had 4 losses.
I have an aunt that I have one aunt, her child had lost.
Yeah, and talking about grief and loss and death is definitely a sensitive topic of ours, but it's a part of life. It's something that we need to be having conversations about, because that's of course where the healing lies, right? If you learn that you experienced a loss, I experienced a loss, then we can come together as a community and help each other heal. Sure.
Absolutely. So, all right, great stuff, ladies. The next question is the role of doulas in pregnancy and loss. So that is strictly go for you, Miss Amina, because you are a doula and we want to hear all that.
Yeah, because that also ties into how I started as a doula. Um, I ended up being trained as a doula because I was working as a clinician in a private group practice. And of course, what I began to notice is all of my patients were women. All of them were women of color, but specifically, majority of them were Black women, right? So off the bat, that was close to my heart. And then I also began noticing, right, like they were all of the age of family planning, either early career women, also beginning to think about marriage and familyhood. And then there were also some women who were already mothers, but they came into treatment wondering, right? I think this is what I was dealing with. I think I was dealing with postpartum depression, and my youngest is 3 years old, and I think I might still be dealing with postpartum depression 3 years later. And so hearing this from the women started making me feel insecure, only because, like you mentioned earlier, started realizing like I don't think I was prepared enough to deal with what I'm seeing in the treatment space. Social work school never talked about, while there was a lot of conversation on substance abuse treatment, a lot of conversation on mental health, but not specifically on how to recognize perinatal mood and anxiety disorders, right? So I'm freaking out low key, like, do I have enough information? Do I have enough insight to support these women who are dealing with pregnancy related mood and anxiety issues? So did some research and came up on PSI, right? Postpartum Support International, who offers specialized training for perinatal practitioners, but then also doula support came up in my research as well. And started doing some research on the ways that doulas can support mental health, the mental health of pregnant women, and got way more out of the training experience that I stepped into it, right? Because when we talk about maternal mortality, 80% of those losses are preventable, and 20% of that 80% are due to mental health, right? And so I became a doula to inform my practice because as doulas, we are trained professionals to support expecting mothers and their families emotionally, physically, and resource-wise as well. So the birthing experience, the pregnancy experience, and pregnancy loss experience comes with a world of emotions that oftentimes your providers aren't accessible to help you and walk you through. So the thing about doulas is we provide a type of continuity of care, right? Where in between your sessions with your OB or your midwife, your doula is there by phone, by text. I come to your home. I spend like 2 hours in your home, getting to know your husband, getting to know your little toddler, and just having conversations with you on a personable, on a human level. And just that right there, just that type of interaction, just that type of contact really from what I've seen can do so much to help alleviate the anxiety that our mamas and their families are feeling around their pregnancies and around their pregnancy losses. And then there's the physical comfort that is that's available through your doula. You talked about your loss, and what we don't talk about is what pregnancy loss, how that actually plays out, right? Because you're giving birth to an unborn child doesn't make the labor and delivery experience any different from giving birth to a live child, right? So having your doula there to help you express.
I had to deliver all of my babies.
Mhm.
I felt it and the milk and.
Because how else is the baby gonna come out?
I had to deliver my baby.
It was already.
And for the 4 babies, as I was delivering one, one was dying, because as they were being born, they were dying, right? So I'm hearing one take the last breath, going into pushing out another one, and I had to go through 4 babies and 4 placentas.
Yep. All giving birth in the same way that a mother was giving birth to a live baby kid, right? So there's that same level of discomfort, there's that same level of pain, that anticipation, and the doula can help make sure that you don't go through that alone. You'll have your family there for those who have family accessible, but sometimes even the dad and the grandma and the auntie, it's a space that they feel isolated as well because they don't know what to do, right? They don't know how to be of assistance. So as a doula, I take a community approach. How can we get mom? How can we get grandma? How can we get everybody involved to make sure that the mom, whether it's a loss or not, that she can feel cared for and supported through this process.
Wow, that's a lot.
And advocacy and education, right? Because we do so much as doulas, in addition to providing emotional support, physical comfort. There's the advocacy and education. Like you mentioned, right? Not every hospital has the resources to support mothers who are grieving the loss of a baby. And so there are so many different ways that can play out for the mother. And sometimes the providers aren't able to offer that insight, right? So, for example, if you learn that you're losing your baby, and you give birth and deliver that baby, you shouldn't be sitting in the maternity ward listening to all of the mothers give birth. You can go to the general unit, right, where the other patients are and recover in that space, as opposed to sitting and having to relive that trauma all over again. And the doula can help advocate and let the nurses know that she has a right to recover somewhere else. She shouldn't be living in that space.
You can't get up. I just remember being in the bed of hearing it, but I wasn't in a position to be able to get up. I just delivered, bleeding, everything else. I didn't have anybody that could walk out there.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Very, very briefly for everybody in the audience that just heard Miss Sharon's Turnage story, testimony about actually having to deliver 4 young men that were not going to be alive.
It's like,
Do you have any questions, real briefly, any questions for Miss Sharon Turnage about her
yeah,
experience?
I feel like emotional. Just for living out.
Wow. Anytime you hear just trauma or whatever, you hear somebody else's story, welcome in young man, welcome in spiritual. Real briefly, as we go into the program and don't take a whole lot of time up, just more stuff if anyone, thank you. If anyone has any questions to ask Ms. Sharon Turnage, please do so now about what she's gone through.
So Sharon just got,
No.
I'm normally good.
Oh, wow.
With just that memory.
We're gonna take a quick moment.
That speaks to
This was heavy. This was heavy.
Okay.
This was Shunshine. How you doing, Shunshine? This was heavy. This was heavy. 2 seconds, everybody.
Figure one,
Wow.
I'm sorry.
Wow.
Thank you. Yeah.
Right.
Thank you. You know,
Wow.
you know, at the time, and just to say when it happened, to talk about toxic positivity. At the time when I had my 4 boys, I was told by people around me that I should be happy because how was I going to support my babies? So I heard it so much that at the time I didn't even talk about it or even grieve it. I thought I had to listen to what people were telling me, and that why was I upset or even sad or I should have been happy, right? I internalized that, so I never even spoke about them. I just put them out of my mind, and I just went on with life as normal until I had Tyler, and I felt like, you know, y'all told me to understand 4, but now I have to understand 1. And then all the pain from the boys and Tyler just hit me, and it took me 2 long years to like just, I felt like life was over, not in a suicidal way, but that how do I move forward in life without my 5 babies?
Ooh. You got me to something. Wow.
And I'm still,
Excuse me, everybody.
yeah, and I'm still, I guess y'all can see, I'm still processing it. I'm still, and I'm good. Like, these are tears of just acknowledging my loss.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm okay. But that's why it's important to do the work, because our babies didn't live, they existed. And just really quick, I'm gonna say their names because for a long time I couldn't even honor them in name. So Dominique, Donovan, Devin, and Derek,
Absolutely.
and then Tyler Nicole.
They definitely live on in spirit. Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely. Right?
Let's get some.
I've been listening. Excuse me. It almost reminds me of the conscious parenting theory, right? And in her book, she talks about how it's actually unlike our traditional idea of parenting, where we are under this impression that we are there to guide our children, right? So what you're saying, it's reminding me of what the concept of conscious parenting discusses, where our children are here to actually be our guide. So even post-mortem, right? Your four children, I feel like even in their own way, they help to shape who you are today.
So can I tell you guys, I would not be the person that I am today. I truly feel that the day Tyler passed away was my new birthday.
Okay.
And they put me on a path of purpose. So there is the light at the end of the tunnel. My babies live with me. That's why I do this work. And they live with me through life. And so I am still a mother of 10 because I have 5 children. I'm a mother of 10. And I wouldn't even be the person I am today if I didn't go through that experience. So I'm so overjoyed, right, that those babies came into my life. I don't know where I would be if it wasn't for that. So believe me, these tears are just amazing tears for their life. We're here right now because of them, right? I do the work and started my Tyler Nicole Foundation because I said, not another family will ever go without support. And I've done hundreds. I mean, I've had Amina, we've done events here, I've done events with Amina, I've done it all across the country. I'll be the next 2 weeks in 3 different cities doing the work. So I just want to say to you guys, we are just showing you guys that these babies live, they existed. These families are still parents, right? They're still moms, they're still dads. They've still had babies. I have rainbow babies. Rainbow baby being a baby that you have after a loss. I have rainbow babies. Right? And so the goal is that we are going to hold space for these families. And that's the most important thing. There are families like me that are just crying inside and grieving in silence, moms, dads, families, because we don't have anybody that's just nationwide just talking about it. October is Pregnancy and Loss Awareness Month. Do any of you guys see any programming out there? Right. But yet it's the once again, 1 million babies die. 1 in 4 experiences a loss. So if you take anything, and I know we're still going through, tell us somebody to tell somebody to tell somebody. And then reach out to all the different spaces that are holding space for this, because we gotta acknowledge our babies. Our babies are not gone. Our babies are with us every single day.
Excellent. Oh, wow. I mean, I always go up to people that are in the military and say, thank you for your service. But I mean, you have to get the same exact credentials because not everyone
can go back into what we would call on this side the mud. The mud meaning the trauma, to relive sensitive trauma to make life better for others, to give others support that you did not have. And me personally, and I'm sure on behalf of everybody here, we want to thank you for your strength.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
To make things better in the time to come. Let's just hope just physically doesn't have to happen. But there are being things that are being done, implemented to give people the care that they need. It's very important. Thank you so much, Sister Sharon. The next question we're gonna go to is, what are some benefits of having? All right, everybody, it's New York City, it's what it is, and we live through this, so this is second nature to us.
Please, all day.
This is this Cuba right here, man, on the major block right here, man. What are some benefits of having a doula during pregnancy, particularly for families at risk of loss or those dealing with complicated pregnancies? I'm gonna turn that again over to you, Amina, because this is what you deal with directly.
Yeah, so in addition to the emotional support that doulas offer, we also help families in making informed decisions. As like we mentioned earlier, oftentimes providers aren't sharing enough education to patients about what their options are, what their rights are. So as a doula, we empower families to make informed decisions by informing them about what their options are, what their patients' rights are, and helping them to learn the questions that they should ask, so that they can have some clarity about what this experience is for them, what this experience will be like for them. Also advocating in healthcare settings, sometimes it can be difficult for patients to speak up and speak out to medical providers. Historically, we've sort of set our providers on this pedestal, right, of them being the expert. And so what that looks like is sort of taking their word from it, right? Taking their word as power over our bodies. And so as a doula, we can sort of empower the families and help advocate for what their needs are, what their preferences are. And also coping strategies, because this loss is going to take a toll on you emotionally, physically, psychologically. So what we do as doulas can also play a role in supporting families with complicated pregnancies by helping them develop techniques and practices to help them cope through this experience. Because it's not a one-day turnaround. This is a journey that they'll be on likely for the rest of their life, coping with this grief and with this loss. So that's what we offer. Yeah, absolutely.
Now, in addition to that, I wanted to just ask real quick. Has there ever been any cases to where you've been told you're doing too much?
If I have,
Not
I
enough.
heard it.
No, of course. But again, now, we have questions like when people say that they're not getting African American women are not getting surgery that they need because they may feel one way or the other, or they just not being taken, heard or whatever have you. So what if you have a representative as a doula, have you ever been in a position?
So I wanted to say, maybe not from the patients, but a lot of the providers,
That's what
doctors,
the doctors and the providers.
don't think, and she can speak to this, don't necessarily want the collaboration.
Yeah, because they're in their terrain, and this is if you're having a hospital birth, right? Like, let's debunk the myth that there's only one way to give birth, right? We can give birth at home. We can give birth at a birthing center, in addition to having giving birth at a hospital, right? And hospitals are needed. I talk a lot of crap about the healthcare system, but hospitals are needed, right? They have advanced technology that can detect complications in the pregnancy, right? They are able to do surgeries to save the baby's life, to save the mother's life. But, and I think I just lost my train of thought.
The collaboration.
The collaboration. So as a doula, being a trained professional, we learn how to be able to leverage the voice of the patient in a way that can help foster a cohesive type of healthcare structure. As a doula, we are a part of your care team, whether the OBs and the providers realize it or not. But there is an art to being in their space in that setting so that you can be accepted. I've never been told that I'm doing too much, but sometimes that's what's needed. You have to do too much because as a doula, you can see how when not enough is being done for your patient, right? So as a doula, we have this level of awareness, this knowledge, this education where I can easily see when a nurse is not fulfilling her role as a nurse in a way that feels safe for my client.
And just to add, we provide care as providers in a multidisciplinary approach in so many different other areas. But pregnancy and that whole perinatal process is the one area where there's not that multidisciplinary team approach. And I've always said that that's what is needed in pregnancy. You need the doctor, the nurse, social worker, even a midwife, doula, right? Why can't we all work together? Because where the doctor may not see something, the doula can pick it up. The social worker can make sure the resources is there, or the doula can too. I'm like, why can't we all work together? Because then if that kind of care is provided to Black women especially, I believe those numbers will drop.
Okay, absolutely. Another thing about this, right? The doctors are not the experts of birth. They're the experts in their field, in their corner of birth, but they're not the experts. Midwives know how to give birth. Social workers know how to support the families. Doulas know how to advocate. And I believe if once providers can take that type of approach, a holistic approach to care for birthing mothers, then we wouldn't be caught in the hospitals being made to feel like we're doing too much. Because oftentimes there's not enough being done.
This next question is going to be, what steps can parents take to find a doula who is trained in supporting families through loss?
Well, you got one ready,
Right. Everybody.
So you can go to the internet, right? There's so many ways to find a doula within your neck of the woods. Specifically for Black doulas, there's a Black doula directory online. You can look into your local community organizations, speak to your hospitals. So I know here in New York City, there are some hospitals that have birthing centers built in. And so they have midwives available, they have doulas available. I trained with Mama Glow. You can look through the Mama Glow Foundation to find you a doula. Ancient Song Doula is a local doula organization. There's the Mothership. There's so many doula alliances out here in New York City. So they're around. You go to the internet, Google, ask for word of mouth. Yeah, hit me up. I can help you find your doula.
And you could also hit my Tyler Nicole Foundation. Of course, I'm gonna offer Amina, she's available. But I'm definitely I do a lot of case management, working with throughout the perinatal period, preconception, postpartum. But we'll definitely, if you contact the Tyler Nicole Foundation, we will get you connected to whatever resources you need, including a doula.
And let's not be confused, right? Because a doula is not the solution to the problem,
Yes.
right? But there is research that shows that having a doula present can be really helpful to mitigating some of the problems that we face during the birthing process. And that having a doula present can help minimize some of those numbers, some of those lost numbers.
To let the record reflect, if you're looking for anyone in the advocacy department of doula or just supporting services, we have two lovely ladies here, Sharon Turnage, Amina T.
Yeah.
If you're definitely in the New York City area
Or even
or
here.
surrounding,
Yeah, because we nationwide, so
so
it doesn't matter where you are, contact me.
You can find somebody.
You can be, they can give you assistance and find somebody you need in your local area, in your services here, utilize it.
I will also say too, right, because there's a lot of advocacy that goes into being a doula, but your family members can be your advocate too, right? Like, while doulas are professionally trained to play in this role, there are resources available to help support family and community be that advocate. So I'm a newly minted ACT facilitator through the Black Coalition for Safe Motherhood. Through the Black Coalition for Safe Motherhood, what we do is we hold groups, workshops with the community to give you these skills through the art of role play to give you these skills to know how to advocate, right? Because it's one thing to say what we should be doing, right? And I found this organization because I was like, all right, this is what we should be doing. But how do we teach the community to be of support to these mamas, particularly where standing down to the healthcare system has been our norm since we could think of, right? And so through the through the ACT workshop, we armed the community with this acronym called ACT, A-C-T-T, which stands for ask questions, right? Continue to ask questions until you're satisfied with the answers that you're getting. So if the doctor is giving you information about your pregnancy, about your baby, and things aren't sounding right and you're just not understanding, keep asking those questions. If you're not satisfied, just keep asking those questions. If you're tired of asking the questions, get your auntie, get your husband, somebody available with you to help ask those questions. C is claim your space, right? Your body is your space, right? The doctor isn't the expert of who you are. So claim your space, right? Own your body. The other T is tell your story, right? Tell your story. Tell anyone who would listen what it is that you're experiencing so that you can get the help you need. And T is trust your body. If your body is speaking to you and something's happening and you know that it doesn't feel right, trust your body and tell your story to your doctors.
And one last thing to add, remember you are patients. You don't have to be the provider. And so I want patients to also, like I said, utilize a doula, utilize the other resources, but know that providers, and I'm speaking to my provider people, we gotta start stepping up. Because patients should just be able to be patients. They shouldn't have to figure out what's wrong and tell you about it and figure out the interventions and pull you on board and also try to just be pregnant and have a baby. Providers, we gotta step up.
I'd be open to doing an ACT workshop with the community here, right? So that we can, and that ACT acronym and what will be discussed in the workshop is not exclusive to your OB/GYN setting. You can take those skills and apply it to any provider's office that you are. Actually, the curriculum came out of a curriculum that was more generalized, right? And then they drilled it down to working with the birthing population. So I would love to do an ACT workshop with the community.
Okay, beautiful.
You're right.
Okay, well, more the merrier. Okay, as this program continues, we're going to add in the mental health part of this now. Mental health and coping, obviously with Sharon and Amina. How can individuals cope with the emotional toll of pregnancy and infant loss?
So first, I wanted to just give some of the symptoms because I think that's important to know. So mother's emotional experiences, extreme sadness, quiet and withdrawn, potential suicidal ideas and feelings of emptiness, isolation, anger, mood changes, irritability. Some moms have difficulties being around pregnant women and infants. So I put that in there because sometimes we're inviting a mom that just experienced the loss to a baby shower or to meet our new baby, right? They may not be ready for that, right? So understanding and being mindful of that for that mom, that father, that family. And then complicated grief responses. I want to just go into the father's symptoms first and then go back to the complicated grief. So for fathers, we want to look for isolation, restlessness, anger, sadness, and powerlessness, and oftentimes feeling inferior and overlooked because once again, fathers going through that experience, many times we're all like, mom, 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 right? And the dad is a parent, right? The dad lost their baby as well. And like I said, we want to hold space for our fathers. We don't want to leave them out. Just really quick, complicated grief. And complicated grief is prolonged grief and grief that has gone on for an extended amount of time. And the thing about complicated grief is that it can really just impact a person's functioning, right? When you're at a point where your functioning has been diminished and you don't feel like being out in, in the world, you don't feel like doing things, you feel like staying inside and kind of staying to yourself, and just really that depression and that sadness just is very overwhelming, right? Many a times that complicated grief comes from unprocessed grief, right? Not working with a clinician, right, a therapist, or being a part of a support group, or even just somebody holding space for you. And so really quick, I just want to say, when it comes to pregnancy infant loss, many times people just can't see themselves past that loss at that particular moment, right? It may not be that you can do anything for that person. I know for myself and many of the other families I speak to, the biggest thing is the acknowledgement, right, of the loss, and just letting a person know that you see them, you feel them, and whatever I can possibly do, right? And I'm just putting that out there because if you were to ask me what can help me, is you giving me my babies back. I know that's not possible. So once again, just acknowledging and just with any loss, period, grief and loss, when the crowds, after the funeral and the crowds stop and the phone calls stop and everything, people have to sit in that pain. And loss is one of the most painful things ever, because that pain is never going to go away. You're never going to get that person back. So once again, the biggest thing I just want us to know is we need to hold space for people. And holding space doesn't have to be that you're doing anything, but just letting a person know that you see them.
And just to the grieving mom, like you said, holding space. I think it's important for the grieving moms to hold space for themselves, right? And allow yourself to grieve. Because, allow yourself to feel all of the wide ranges of emotions that you're dealing with, sadness, anger, isolation, confusion, and maybe for some even relief. It might be a sense of relief, but allowing yourself to experience that grief and taking your time, right? Because grief is it's not a short-lived experience, and it comes in waves. There's no stages of grief, but there's waves of grief. It's not a linear process. So you're moving in and out to what your experience is like. So it's important for mothers to allow themselves that time to process the grief and just make it an experience. Practicing self-care is important, and there's some really practical ways of self-care. Being mindful, right, of the fact that you're in a grief space, I think, is a form of self-care, because it can be so easy to sort of like sweep it under the rug. But sitting in that grief with yourself is necessary. for the purpose of self-care. Deep breaths, taking right? Self-care can look like telling someone what it is that you need from them, right? So, just whatever it is that you need to get to be just repay. I just need somebody to do my laundry because I'm just not up to it, right? I just need somebody to help me feed the family for the week because I'm not feeling well. I was not feeling well this week, right? Me personally, and I have a 14-year-old looking for food. I'm like, listen, I can't feed you this week because mommy was just under the weather, right? So imagine if grieving family and grieving mom. So that's what we can do. Listen to what this grieving person says that they need and shower the person with that type of love that way. I'll just make sure the food. As you mentioned earlier, this type of loss that we is so much more common than we realize. So there's support groups out there that can help alleviate some of the isolation that comes with dealing with this type of grief.
And that's the biggest, one of the biggest things is the support and being in a space where people know and understand your loss, right? Because I think a lot of times we tend to think like, does anybody get you? So when you're around people that have experienced it, then that understanding and knowing that somebody gets it. Because I don't want to hear somebody say, I understand. I know I told, when I work with people, when I say I understand, I understand. Right? They've been crabby right now. And then, like you said, they yell. The biggest thing that we can do when anybody going through for us is the assisted daily living activities. Eating, sleeping, bathing, getting dressed. Those are the things that a lot of time when you're grieving, you don't want to do it. And I'm in the active hours with Tyler. I didn't want to leave the hospital. I wanted to stay in the hospital. I didn't even want the curtains open. I didn't want to see outside. I didn't want to see that there was a world outside. None of that. All I wanted to do was get my baby back. So making sure and just assisting and helping, like you said, maybe I can cook and then that's your food. But the biggest thing is not for them to even start to breathe, it's for them to just start to function. Because you can't breathe if you're not functioning.
Yeah. Great point. Great point. Okay, next question, ladies. What mental health resources are available for parents and families dealing with grief and how they go about getting it?
Well, I was getting ready to say, we're two therapists. So, and I'm speaking to my Black allies, my brothers, my sisters. We have to start normalizing therapy, right? And I'm just saying, we're talking grief and loss, pregnancy, infant loss. As a community, we're dealing with trauma. If you're Black, you have trauma. If you're Black, you have intergenerational trauma. If you're Black, you have trauma that comes from your ancestors. And if you're Black, you have trauma that comes from your community. And then I didn't even get to the individual things that we experience, the racism, everything else from being Black. If I can just say to anybody out there, therapy, and maybe you just use that time to just talk, to allow somebody to hold space for you. But we don't have to go through these mental health issues that we're dealing with and going through on a day-to-day basis. We can speak to somebody about it. And so I just wanted to normalize therapy first. Now everybody, therapy, they can't do, they may not want to sit and talk to somebody they don't know. Support groups are key, right? But also, even if you don't want to do either one of those, for your mental health, you gotta speak to somebody. I don't care if you pick a friend, you pick a cousin. If you want to call me on the phone and let me hold space for you for the next hour, right? Just to hold space for you. You can't keep it there because when you keep how you're feeling, what you're dealing with, anxiety, depression, low mood, irritability, anger, hopelessness, right? And when you don't process that, suicidal ideation comes in. Feeling suicidal comes in. We know mental health wise, Blacks, our suicide numbers are high. And I don't want to just say for us, adults, like you, 12 to what, 15, are the highest, like, growing number of individuals that are committing suicide. Did y'all hear me? 12 to 15, right?
And those numbers were growing before the pandemic.
They were, yes. And the pandemic has exacerbated it in so many ways just for us. And then I'm not just speaking of Black people, I'm speaking of people, period. But I want to make sure, because I know sometimes there's that little stigma or just that, when we were growing up, you dealt with it, right? You had a loss, you chug it up, you get out there. You have to do what you have to do, right? Feel like sometimes as Black individuals, we're always on survival mode. And we have to be, and then we don't get to take time to process all these different things because we're just existing. It's just hard enough.
Yeah.
But once again, I just cannot reiterate, as a clinician, knowing and seeing the benefits of therapy, the benefits of support groups, and the understanding that it doesn't just have to be for grief and loss. I have clients that are having issues at work and they're in therapy. I have clients that maybe are dealing with, because of stressors, are dealing with anxiety, sadness, and just helping them process that. But please know that you don't have to deal with the things you're dealing with, that it's okay. It's okay to know that you're not okay. And it's okay to open up to somebody.
I was also I want to add, because I'm reminded of social media posts that somebody put online asking about therapy and whether or not you can have more than one therapist, right? I think the traditional therapy probably would say no, but I when I was in social work school, I didn't want to be a therapist. I had this idea about what therapy is, what it looks like, and it just seemed so boring, so stiff. I just didn't feel like it spoke to who I was authentically until I had the opportunity to run some parent groups, right? And connect in a group setting in that way. So I say all that to say is, yeah, you can do different types of therapies. There are different modalities that are out there. And I know that the traditional form of talk therapy may not be sufficient for BIPOC folks, right? Like we heal in different ways. And so there are professionally trained therapists out there who who are able to offer more than just talk therapy, right? But even in talk therapy, it's really important that we have more BIPOC therapists in the field because just being able to relate culturally, right? Having culturally relevant services is important for our community and other BIPOC communities like ours. So, just wanted to add, right? We can utilize all the different types of therapies that are out there in order to provide a more holistic way for healing our community.
And just one thing to add, because you made me think, social workers, what the numbers are 80% that is women, so 20% that it's men.
Wow.
All right. Black clinicians, what is around, or blacks, I think maybe around 20%. I don't want to be wrong with that.
Mhm.
But if there's only 20% of men that are in that field of social work and in that care that we do as social workers, that's not enough for our Black men, right? And I'm not saying that as a woman, I can't be an amazing therapist. I can't. But I just want to encourage the men out there that social work is a field that we need more of you in, right? Because when we say cultural competence, we also want that cultural competence from having people that you look like and of their own sex, right? To be able and gender to be in front of you, right? And so I just want to encourage our brothers out there and even you guys, more important that there's not enough clinicians that look like you to join groups, to come up with groups, to put yourself in spaces where, hey, we may not have a clinician that looks like us, but we're in the space to support each other. I want that for our men.
Excellent. Excellent. I will add in real quick that I think Kanye West was, he really put that statement on the map that
It's okay not to be okay. And I'm gonna go on record myself and say, it's okay not to be okay. But it's not okay to not be okay and not try to become okay.
Like that.
So keep that in your mind. You're good if you're not okay, because that's normal. But you gotta try to come back to becoming okay, because that's not normal.
Optimal mental, physical, and emotional health is key.
But if I can just add, because I know you asked where can people find these resources?
Yes.
Right, talked about Postpartum Support International, they offer all different types of specialized groups. Um, who else? Then there, so I recently took a training, a Pale Advocate training.
Yeah.
Pregnancy and infant loss awareness training, right? So you don't need to be a therapist, but you can be trained around pregnancy and infant loss awareness so that you can be an advocate. And that advocacy could look like holding space, right, in your community, so you can give your community members the space to feel. So Pale Advocacy, I learned a lot through their training. Postpartum Support International offers resources.
And my organization, I normally work with families for free. And I do anything from our organization, we show up in the hospitals, sort of like things. We show up in the hospitals and we're gonna be there to hold your hand and not leave your side. And if you need help with resources, if you need help with, just whatever it is, we're there before, during, after. And then I also make sure if they need access, if they want with therapy, right? They want therapeutic services, that they get that too. And everybody I work with has been free of charge.
Excellent.
Some hospitals and birthing centers, they offer moving support, faith-based support, because they're and church, right? You don't have to choose whether. There's also some books out there that you can. I have CASAC-T, but what's getting up in my first one, Empty Cradle, Broken Heart by Dr. Gregory A. Adams. There's another book called I Carry You by Angie Smith, offers insights and guidance for that.
Now, this was sort of a continuation, but it has its own challenge. This question here. And the new question is, what role do support groups and community networks play in the healing process? And how much wiggle room are they given in the areas of hospital or outpatient? As in, what could you do or what would allow you to do, trying to deal with grief, obviously, but staying in the confines of the law?
So what the hospitals provide, hospitals provide.
How can organizations partner with the hospitals?
And this is the thing, so this is the thing, and I wanna say, the reason why I put that question is because Northwell,
Yeah, that's a good answer.
a couple of hospitals have really branched into community care, community work. I'm in Staten Island. I want to shout out Staten Island. I know we act like y'all are not a part of New York City, so I'm sorry about that.
Right, foresee.
The one thing I'll say about Staten Island is they are big in doing community work. Northwell, CACR, which I'm on with the organization and on the board. It's so many organizations out there that are making sure the hospitals and the community organizations are linked. The hospitals are doing such a major effort in getting in the community. And I must say, the hospitals realize they can't care for all the patients. That's just a fact. They can't care for every single patient that comes in, right? They could give the care, like you said, the birthing, you're out, what, 2, 3 days, you're out, now you're back in the community, right? They're getting better. We have laws in place that have now extended the postpartum care. But really, the community organizations like myself is the ones that's providing all the postpartum care, or the providers like us are providing the care. And the hospitals are making that effort. But what we need to do is hold the hospitals to task, right? Because every patient that walks through their door is $1. Right, they're a $sign. They come in, and when the care isn't free, so these hospitals have millions upon millions of dollars, right, at their disposal. But how much of the effort is being made to now interact? Because I was at a conference, and they talked about how nonprofits are caring for all the patients that the hospitals can't, right? So now, I'm an organization, but many a times my referrals aren't necessarily coming from the hospital, they're coming from people that know how to do the work. I'm now in works with some of the hospitals so that the referrals can come to me, but this shouldn't be something that we're working on now, this is something that should have been in place. So we all have to, and that's that meso community work, that work is critical, and it needs to be fluid, and it needs to be collaborative, and it needs to be ongoing. And so calling all of our hospital systems to task, first of all, when we know the systems haven't always served the populations the way they needed to. And like I said, I don't want to call out people. We just did a presentation yesterday where we talked about calling out and calling in. Calling out is just gonna not allow us all to come to the table. So I'm calling in all of our systems. We need to sit to the table and see how we can collaborate and improve the care, because that collaboration, that multidisciplinary type of approach is gonna save lives.
Excellent.
I love community-based work, right? Because community healthcare workers, right, are deeply connected to the communities that they serve, right? And so they bring their authentic selves into the work, offering workshops for education, offering information around coping skills, right? And so, like you said, with collaboration with hospitals, with the hospital systems, with appropriate funding, community-based organizations can do the much needed work. You know, I work with Dr. Leslie Farrington of Black Coalition for Safe Motherhood. And, you know, she's pretty pissed off at the healthcare system. She's a retired OB, and, you know, she's pretty radical in how she shares her thoughts on these issues. But what she's helped me to learn is we can't wait for the system to do the work for us, right? We have leadership within our communities, and with proper leadership development, proper awareness of the jewels that we have in our communities. Like I said in the beginning, we have what we need to heal ourselves,
Right.
as opposed to waiting for the system to figure it out for us. So I'm definitely down for all of the community healthcare workers.
And that's
out there.
community, whether it's an organization, an individual, we need everybody at the table. We need the patients, we need the providers, we need the institutions, we need the community, CBOs, the churches.
Yep.
We need everybody to come together.
Yeah, we're the ones doing the workshops. We're the ones holding the panel conversation. We're the ones sending the education. We're the ones doing the memorial events, right? To pay honor and homage to these losses in our communities. So, yeah.
Okay. And one thing I may quickly add is getting together and remember all the billboards that used to be with Camel Joe and the camel with the cigar and or the cigarette and stuff like that. Getting together with advocacy groups and just the community and putting up billboards wherever we can about these issues. Because the more you see it, the more you become aware of it. So that's very important. Next question, lady. How can advocacy groups, how can advocacy help bring attention to the health disparities that contribute to higher rates of loss among certain populations? That's what I just said.
From what we just said,
Yeah.
but we have to keep being loud.
Yeah,
We have to make people uncomfortable. The bottom line is, I'm not scared to get out here and call certain things out. And I'm always mindful, and I'm not trying to blame because, like I said, we want to call people in. But there's a problem in this country. That's why the title was Let's Talk Pregnancy, Infant Loss Crisis. There's a crisis when 1 in 4 families experiences a loss. And a lot of these losses are preventable. There's a problem in this country when Black women are losing their life or the life of their baby at a disproportionately higher number than any other, you know? So we can't sit back and be quiet. We have to, everyone here, call to action. If everyone is listening, I need everyone that is listening, whether it's in here or live, I need you to tell 5 people some of what we talked about, that 1 million babies die every year, 1 in 4 mothers experiences a loss, and grief is very devastating, and it's real, and families need support. And that's it. You could just share that, right? But that grassroots movement, it's gonna move and move and move. The advocacy, the awareness is key.
Because raising awareness can influence policy change, right? It can promote research funding. You can coalition build together, educational campaigns, right? All in service of being a solution to the problem.
Excellent. Thank you, ladies. I want to thank everybody for joining in on this very, very important topic of loss and grief, of course, mainly with our infants and the mothers and the fathers. Very important that we take this time to really look and see how we can all chip in making this place better and safer for our mothers. Because without these mothers, there's no future living. There's no little juniors running around. There's no population. And let alone that, the people who provide the space for us to get the message out. She said, but she loves to stay behind the scenes. And we're going to leave it that way. She knows she is. Thank you very much. The owner of the barbershop always opens her doors for us to have the necessary important conversations to bring awareness to all of the situations that happen in our community that affects us, and unfortunately at a disproportionate rate on negative issues that's going to hurt us. So let us take this time to reflect and spread the love, spread the knowledge.
And just really quick, the 15th, October 15th is Pregnancy Infant Loss Day, right? Awareness. Oh, no, October. I'm already in November. Yeah. So October is Pregnancy Infant Loss Awareness Day. And normally what happens is in the evening, they want you to light a candle. So I'm gonna encourage everybody out there on the 15th, to light a candle, cut on your phone, cut a light on, whatever. But, let's acknowledge all the babies that have been lost on the 15th and for the rest of this month, right? The same as we do with breast cancer awareness, right? Let's talk about this. We have a whole month, even if you just get with your family and just talk to your family about, hey, this work. But do something in October. Let's honor our babies.
Excellent. And once again, on behalf of Barbershop Convo Series, I want to thank everybody for joining in and sitting into this very important topic. Hope to see you soon. We will always advertise the next time we're having something, which is once a month at the very least. So after that, take care, everybody. You just cut off.
So is it October, or November? October, right?
October.
October, because it's Tuesday. It's Tuesday?
Yes, this